Kia ora, g'day, welcome back once again here with a reaction request to Mr. Hugh Keir's HR podcast, and he has got Mr. Chris Ryan, former 22 SAS. It's got here SAS hero Chris Ryan on the Bravo 20 mission and the problems it caused. So let's jump into this one.
No, I did. So Huey, the Canadian, kind of the same thing, and kind of.
Yeah,
because the Canadians have web feet, don't they? Absolute pleasure, fellas.
Nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you. Ben, weasel your way onto the podcast again. So, 25 years ago, when I was reading a certain book by a person called Chris Ryan, did not expect I'd be sitting here 25 years later talking to the man. And then to find out you've not done a podcast yet.
Yeah.
First podcast.
It's the technology.
But you guys, so people know I know Ben. You guys have got similar background in Choo-Choo. Pick up the conversation from where we were talking before we started. You're on about there was no social media back in the day.
No, it wasn't. I mean, the internet didn't even exist when I was in the regiment. I can see the benefits, obviously, it gives you, but also the negativity from that side. So it's a balance. The fact that just simple things that you can look on Google Maps, for instance. If you go back to the first Gulf War, the mapping that we had dated back to 1945. That's when it was printed. And then they give us a modern one, but it was an aviator's map. So it was $250,000. It was absolutely unfit for purpose. GPSs came in a box like that. And they weren't that accurate and they were very difficult to use. So I can see the benefits of technology.
That was the Magellan, a big beast of Magellan. Yeah. I remember, the aviation maps. I mean, when I went to Afghanistan in 2006, it was Iraq. Went to Iraq in 2003. And we got given that, saying they were 1 in 1 million aviation maps. Well, they dish them out anyway. They give them out anyway.
Oh, yeah, our escape maps, they covered the whole of Iraq. I suppose they were the only decent things. And I was lucky that I just had to follow the course of a river. I'd have been screwed if it had been in the jungle or a different, theatre of operations. I wouldn't have gotten out. So all I had to do is get a balance.
It's interesting talking about the maps and stuff. I've still got the escape and evasion maps for Iraq. I think I've got 3 or 4, something like that. Anyway, they're bloody big things, but they're pretty handy.
Where the river was, and that's where you get all your habitation, locals. But then the wadis ran down towards the river. Now, if I pulled away, so I was more in the interior, and then I was walking up and down, and there was no way I was going to cover 190 odd miles by doing that. So I try to stay on the plains and just stay far enough away from the locals. But if I'd had, GPS or had a decent map, you could have picked your way through and it would have been a lot easier.
Yeah. Do you think that, we can come back onto that, 190 miles, I forgot how far it was. Do you guys think that with the advancement of information technology, especially where social media is concerned now, do you think that it impacts the quality of the recruit, generally speaking, for the British forces?
We talked about this a few times. I think, we played in the woods as kids. That's what we talked about. We played in the woods as the kids. Fieldcraft was something very natural to a lot of us because we did that all the time. I think the standards of fieldcraft have to be a lot more worked on. They have to be worked on by the depot screws and their instructors more so than they would have done probably, certainly in my time when I first joined and certainly your time.
I'm not sure if it's going to come through on here, but the audio sounds a little bit funny. Like I can hear him, but it's not as clear as what Hugh's podcast audio usually sounds like anyway. But anywho, we'll see what happens.
When it comes to technology, however, we're seeing the recruits now and also the students now, they're all over it. I mean, straight away you can give them the kit, but the problem you've got then is how to implement the technology, or what happens when that technology goes down. How do you still? So, for example, it's great to have a GPS and to have all these other bits and pieces? What happens if your GPS goes down? Do you have the knowledge of knowing what the rivers do? Do you have the knowledge of how to hide, how to evade, the reason why things are seen, etc., etc.? So I think the seeing, or what I have seen, is people all over technology, but not necessarily over the basic skills.
We were just talking about that as well. In my experience, going back into the well, it was late 70s. I was getting ready to join as a boy soldier. I got jaundice, so I was put back, missed that intake. In that in-between time, I joined the TA SAS 2-3 SAS. And their focus was a lot of escape and evasion, living out in the woods, under a basher, navigational skills. We used to do them, stay behind shelters on the German border. Now that's a basic skill. That's your foundations. I had the feeling when I joined 22 in the mid 80s, we were above it. Nobody was interested in doing an escape and evasion exercise because it meant you were going to get dirty, wet, and, it was going to be difficult. But that is the foundations of any soldier, whether he be an ordinary infantry.
It's interesting hearing him say that. When he was in the TA or territorial SAS first, they did a lot of combat survival, escape and evasion stuff. And then when he joined 2-2, the regiment full-time, in the mid-80s, I think I heard him say he seemed like they were a bit above it. They didn't want to do it because it was going to be hard and get, dirty weapons and that sort of stuff. That's
or a special forces soldier. He needs to know that. Everything that Ben has just said there, that's a must.
It's pretty basics, right?
Yeah, you can't skip on it. And then from that side, I think, again, a lot of young kids coming in maybe now need to be taught that and shown that. But there's a second sense, I think, you look at where you will see something and you'll know that's danger. Before you've even worked out, where's your escape route, you move into a position and you go, right, I'm blocked in here. If I get taken this side, I've got nowhere to run or whatever. All the basic stuff. And it's very important, I think, that soldiers understand that.
You get that when you go into like a pub.
Yeah.
Straight away your hair's going on the back and think, I've got a bad vibe with this place. This doesn't feel right. I need to do this, or I need to raise this to everyone else to kind of get that. So.
Totally. There's just something there. When a guy gives you a look, you can pick out regiment guys, you can pick out military guys just by simple things. And you're making these assessments as you're ordering that pint of lager as well. And you will see where if somebody's got an interest in you when you're walking down a street. I mean, because of the work I've done since leaving a regiment and being in the public domain, I still walk down the street and I'm looking, the guy's looking at me, I'm thinking, the fuck are you looking at? And I made a big mistake one time, and this is going back probably 15 years. I was in a bar in Newcastle and this guy's standing staring at me. So I thought, fuck, I'm not going to wait till it kicks off. So I went across. I said, what's wrong? What's your problem? I went, I just thought you were Chris Ryan. And I felt such hate. I was like that, for Christ's sake. It was just one of them things.
You have to live up to the reputation there, you see. Yeah,
No, I was more embarrassed. But anyway, no, that's getting on to the basics. Because I'll tell you one thing, and you both know this. One thing with technology, it always fails. And it always fails when you need it. It's like that stoppage on a weapon. It's like when you can't get through on the radio or the internet crashes. And again, going back to basic skills, getting that compass out. Now, in 1991, when we were on the ground there, we'd been given the wrong frequencies for the 320, which had the EMU, the burst system, and we couldn't get through. And it came down to me on Morse code, basics,
I wonder if they're still teaching Morse code in the regiment to this day. I'd like to think they are, just because of what Chris has been talking about so far. Murphy's Law, guarantee, technology when you need it most is typically going to go down or may go down. Hopefully improvements get better and that minimises the chance of that. But having Morse code as a skill I think it's great. When he said the 320s, I think in my time on Cycle and NZ, I think we were using what was called a 319. So maybe the generation before the 320s. But it was a data burst system, could do code and stuff on it. You get the code books out and they were only for a limited period of time. And or you could do Morse code and stuff on them. So, yeah.
If you don't have them skills, you can't do it. And I remember doing an exercise with Delta We went over to Oman. This is in the mid-80s. And they had handheld radios. And we were getting out the 320 and tapping away after, getting the code book out, the encryption out, running through all of that. And he was laughing and joking at us. And I thought, it must be fantastic just to be able to get an encrypted radio and be able to talk. But then we went to the jungle where his kit didn't work and he couldn't communicate. And that's basics.
There's also something that you've got at the moment is the reliance on technology. So we've seen this a lot recently. When I joined 20 plus years ago, when you joined, we worked on skeds. We only communicated when we needed to communicate. We communicated on times and that we were told to need to. What we're seeing now is an over need, a requirement for information. We're seeing a lot of the officers where they need this information. And the reason why that happens is because we're overly risk adverse culturally, because that's the way we've become. And because we're overly risk adverse, we need that information to give us the warm and fuzzy. Also, what we find is officers just can't be content with what information they have, so they need to put little pictures on the wall. But all they're doing is compromise.
Just creating more of a signature, which is going to be easier for enemy to detect and pick up the patrols if you're sending more and more comms. I like what he mentioned there about in his time they operated on skeds or schedules where you have known designated times throughout the day. Might only be one or two specific times throughout the day, or over every 48 hour period where you check in with information. You've got enough data information, whether it be a sit rep, all that sort of stuff, but you're not sending information willy-nilly or every bloody hour or 2 hours, because then you increase the potential chance of being pinged and then enemy zeroing in on where you are. So yeah, I'm not sure what he's going to talk about here, but hearing him speak about the skids and just going back, I don't know if they're still teaching Morse code. I enjoyed it, although I struggled when I was learning it. I got to a good enough stage whereby I was able to do that. It would be a skill that I would have to learn again. But I think after having learned it before, it shouldn't be too bad in terms of picking it up again with some consistency and discipline and just focusing in on it. I don't recall doing Morse code on my cycle in Australia, but that may have been because I was fortunate to do the medics course instead, and I didn't do the comms course.
Remember, the analogy I gave to you before was the dick pic. A dick pic is a pointless piece of information that only ever gets you into trouble. So why send a dick pic? And all that a dick pic is in modern technology is constantly sending me a sit rep of what you're up to. You don't need to know that. Yeah. The more I transmit, the more the enemy are going to see me, and the more I'm going to get compromised. So just stick to the basics. Yeah. The basics work. That's why we did it.
Well, that's a basic thing. Like even going back in the day, whenever you were doing a job, the coming across the old radio waves was what's happening. Give me a feel, and it's like keep the airwaves clear. They had a problem with this in the when the B Squadron did the embassy down in 82, 81 or whatever. A lot of the officers outside were told, just keep quiet. We'll tell you when we've got something to say, because it chucks everything up and nobody can get through. Nobody knows what's going on.
1980, 40th anniversary.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I remember when I joined after you, and when I joined it, I went to 3 Para, and we were getting ready to go. I think we were in Northern Ireland or something like that. And I had to put the all back together. Between sergeant, I had to put the all back together, and that consisted of handing around an A4 sheet of paper with some lines on it, and you filled your own details in. Right? Fast forward when I became a platoon sergeant, 2008. Jesus Christ. Office, computer, my entire day was spent behind a computer. Because it was no longer just an all back, exactly you're saying. All this other stuff. And some of it's necessary, some of it's not. But, it took an effort to take myself away from that, spend time with the blokes, get out in the fitness in the morning, because other people couldn't do it.
Well, 7-7. My brother, he's still in Para Edge, he's commissioned now, and he spoke about the health and safety aspect of it, and it was a paper chase. Now, a lot of soldiers, when they join the army, they're not really equipped to be, doing a lot of paperwork. It's certain types of guys, are suited to it. And
I definitely wasn't equipped for doing paperwork.
A lot of it is a waste of bloody time when you consider what we're asking, young paratroopers or young blades to do. You don't need them out writing reams and reams of shit. But I think that's society. When I've been on film sets doing different things, the health and safety.
It interests me the way a number of those from the UK say film or film sets. It still catches me off guard, and I've just heard Chris Ryan say it then, film, when he's worked on film sets. Is that a normal thing, or is that a particular part of the UK, or is that everywhere in the UK they say film? Interesting.
It's like a film directory, and we don't have that anymore, do we?
So there he just said film directory. Sorry to interject. They say film, and then he says there we had a film directory, so I don't know whether it's just I don't know. If somebody knows, let me know.
It's a big book, just crap. So what happens if you trip over that settee? What are you going to do?
It becomes a hindrance on training. There's an absolute need for a lot of it. I can be right, but health and safety has to be there to ensure that it's supporting the training rather than being a hindrance to the training. There is a certain amount of risk taken in our professions, so we need that extra little kind of bit of rope. But to be fair, the more and more constraints we put on ourselves, the harder it is to actually, when we want to go out the door, in the end, it's hard enough to get those operations signed off because we're overly risk averse.
Yeah, and I especially where Hereford and Poole SF is concerned in general. One of the problems you've got with that, you've got the health and safety risk adversity on the one side, plus very well-known unit, a lot of public interest in it. So as that, I'm really interested in your thoughts on this. I don't have any spent time in the training wing, but I remember when someone or a couple of people on selection died. It was a few years ago. Obviously, it's happened regularly. Not regularly. It has happened in the past. I remember a few years ago, hit the news, one or two people died on selection, and it went bigger than better. And that happens a fraction of the time. Risk is managed, but at the end of the day, so of course, things are going to go pear-shaped. Because of the public interest in the unit, the reaction to it was, what's the word? It was a complete overreaction, complete knee-jerk reaction, which I have no doubt I'm training impacts the quality of the troop that you get in the unit.
I'll finish on that piece just from my side, but
that's an interesting point that he's just mentioned. Sorry to cut off this guy. There's the other guy, Ben Garwood, I think is his name. Sorry to cut him off while he's talking here, but just on the back end of what Hugh was talking about, that knee-jerk reaction, people dying on selection, the health and safety aspect. Health and safety is part of that and has probably become more prevalent these days. I can't speak to what it's like now, but I would imagine it's a heck of a lot more prevalent in that space. But also for the unit, the military, the public, the government to understand, health and safety professionals, whatever you want to call them, people on the outside looking in, understanding that those that want to go and serve in that unit understand that there's a significant amount of risk just with the selection, just with the ongoing training, let alone the deployments and operation. They are people that are probably likely inclined to and are willing to accept risk in the first place. Doesn't mean that they're going to go in there reckless and be blasé about it and just, spray and pray sort of thing approach. They're going to be as methodical about it and as mindful about it as they can, but they understand the risks just in the training alone could mean that they could potentially die. So I think there needs to be the understanding of that accidents will happen. You can't prevent all accidents from happening. You may be able to prevent some future ones in hindsight, but that's typically, sadly, after an accident has occurred. And even then, you can't always prevent all accidents from happening, even after they've happened. There's a number of examples of those whereby that's the case. Drink driving is one off the top of the head. We know what causes that. We know we shouldn't do it. We still can't prevent it. It still happens. So just maybe going off on a little bit of a tangent there, but understanding that there's something about individuals that want to go serve in the Special Forces that are prepared and willing and are accepting of the risks that come with that type of work.
Before I left, there was a whole body set up to look after us, and they do a brilliant job. And they're all from the same backgrounds. So the people who actually dig out blind They know exactly what we're training, how we're training, so they know exactly what they need to achieve. So the hats off to those guys for being able to do that. And what they do is make sure it's relevant to how we sort of conduct ourselves. The problem is everyone else trying to put their penny's worth in. And the more we've opened ourselves up, quite rightly, as you said, the more we open ourselves up, there's more people trying to get involved in it.
Mm. No, I mean, there is a thing, I guess, in terms of health and safety, but I would imagine it's more prior to an operation, making sure your orders are given correctly, and that there's a proper ledger of orders of actions on. So, in my case, there was back at the base, it was rumour control. Oh, they're going to head to Turkey, or they're going to head to Syria, through Syria. Nobody had a clue where we were going.
So your estimate that you put.
There was no estimate. There was no formal orders or anything. It was basically verbal on the back of a fag packet. We're going in. We're walking up, putting the OP in. We've got a 48-hour lost comms procedure, which we can go on to because that was really important. And that was it.
The lost comms. So 48 hours. Yeah. If there was no comms for 48 hours, then there'd be a action on.
Yes, we would then.
It's a long old time.
Oh, it is. I mean, it's especially if somebody's chasing you, I'll tell you. But no, we what was important, we had this lost comms procedure, and we were told that the heli would come into an RV. It would either give us a new radio, or pick us up and relocate us, or bring us back, which was fine in principle. The problem was, when we left camp and we were on the ground, they changed the policy. They said, 48 lost comms, forget about it, we're not going in to get them. Now, if they'd said to me, when I was standing at the back of that Chinook, you're going in, but there's going to be no recovery if it goes wrong, I'd still get on the helicopter, because that's what you're in the regiment or the army for. You're going in there to do a job. And yes, our risk would be very high, but you're in the SAS, for God's sake, so we would have all gotten in that helicopter. The trouble was, when we were contacted, we were making to an RV thinking there was a helicopter coming in at 2000 hours. Now, if the Iraqis are getting in front of us in that RV, we would have fought through, undoubtedly lost guys to get there, to be sitting there, waiting, 2000 hours comes in, and there's no bird. That was the problem.
So they changed it and didn't tell you?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, there was nearly a mutiny.
Holy heck. They changed it, didn't tell them. They went out in the first place with the wrong frequencies. I think I heard Chris Ryan say at the start, which I think is mentioned in the book. I've never read the Bravo 20 book. I've got no plans on reading it. I haven't read Chris Ryan's book, the one that got away, but I've heard about it. So anyway, this is great hearing it from one of the horse's mouths here on Who Cares podcast.
Back with their B Squadron, when they knew things had gone wrong, and they said we can't send a helicopter in there. They did say that the message I sent was corrupt. It wasn't, because I've spoken to the signaller. It was a young signaller in Cyprus. That I was basically, it was open, it was on the guard net, as it said, we're compromised, we need to pick up now, and he came back, understood. Going back to that thing of the RV, it's knowing that there's an RV or safety's there, and that directs you, where, as it was, the Iraqis weren't between us and that RV, we made to the RV, but we got there, I think, 5 minutes before, and we couldn't hear that boom, 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 so we knew it wasn't coming, because generally the RAF are on time from there. So then that dictated that we had to keep moving on foot, because the Iraqis were still following us up. It's decisions like that can cost lives, and it's unnecessary.
What was
Man, you'd like to think there's a whole bunch of lessons learned come out of that. So that'd be interesting to hear in terms of the wash up, the debrief, and that sort of stuff, and some hard conversations, I suppose, or I imagine that would have happened, or would have needed to have happened.
The aftermath of the operation then?
Well, see, this is a big thing. When we got back, every op or anything I did in the regiment, there was a debriefing. You would get into the old interest room, squadron interest room, and you would poke fingers at, what went wrong, how it went well, and it cleared the air. We got back, and there was no debriefing, and it was very unhealthy, because then you've got originally it was 8 guys, 3 got killed, you've got 5 guys that, haven't let steam off, and
why wasn't there a briefing?
They wanted to, it wanted to be covered up. Ben will attest to this. I don't know. Have you ever heard of guys?
It's sad hearing him say he just throws everything I was mentioning earlier out of the water. I think I heard Chris Ryan say there was no debrief, and just there, he was saying they wanted to cover it up. They didn't do a very good job if they wanted to cover it up, with Andy McNabb's book coming out and then Chris Ryan's book coming out after that, or however long.
Coming back from an operation and then being given money to go on holiday.
Huh?
Yes, we got back. I was getting ready to go to Everest, to climb Everest. But I was barking at this point. I was seeing things, hearing voices. And I got in, and OC came in and said, I think it was £1,000, book yourself a holiday. I'll keep the £1,000, but I'm going to Everest. He went, no, you're not. And I ended up going to Tenerife, sat with my missus with a slap, face like a slapped arse, like that for a fortnight. The other guys went off, and then we came back, and it was as if nothing had happened. As in, right, get on with your work, guys. So you had this thing covering it. People were covering their arses. That's right from the top to the bottom.
Jeez, that's disappointing and sad to hear. I've not known about any of this in terms of there not being a debrief after that type of patrol. Like you said, there was 8 of them, 3 lost their lives, 5 of them left. That may be why the Kiwi guy that was in the patrol, I'd heard that he was pretty upset about it, and he's got a book out. I think it's Soldier 5, maybe. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on it. I've not read it. I've not seen it. But holy heck. And then they were given £1,000 to go on a holiday and then come back and then just carry it on. You know what? It just reminds me of something that Colin McLaughlin said, former 2-2 SAS operator, Scottish guy. Really good guy. I was fortunate to do some work with him in the private security space in Iraq and Baghdad during that time, and I didn't realise that was not long after he had been captured by Iraqi forces, I think it was, and then the guys went in and got them out, or he got released somehow. I don't know. He never spoke about it. I never knew. I never asked. I didn't know about that until seeing him on the James English podcast, or Anything Goes with James English, I think it was. And he said something similar, like once they come back, there was no debrief or anything. They were just expected to crack on with work. And it sounds like the same for Chris Ryan and his team, which just blows my mind. But then hearing him say that there were people trying to cover their backside at the upper levels is mad. You can go after the troopers or the corporals or the sergeants like the J. Cowles of the world and his team, right? Those upper echelon people will come after them with a vengeance, it seems like. But when stuff like this happens, then it's just been washed under the carpet or swept under the carpet and hidden. That's crap.
And it's not good. And, things went on, and I can remember it was that year's cross brief. We were all told that we would talk about what happened, the experience of being captured or the escape, and how we could change it. Well, not naming names, but the ops officer, he was in charge of, say, claymores and pistols that all went missing. 2 or 3 grenades went missing. So I put my paper. I had to submit my brief to the regiment, and it was just scrubbed out. He said, keep it to about 5 to 10 minutes. And I went, what, my escape? And he went, yeah. I was like, are you kidding me? 5 minutes is is not long enough. And there's an interest there. The guys want to know what it was like. A&D squadron, when they found out that I was we were on the run, they were like, these guys are going to die. They were in double sleeping bags. The diesel was freezing up in the Land Rovers, everything. So they wanted to know what the procedures were. in the head shed were like that. No, 5 minutes. We can talk for 5 minutes.
Holy crap. How poor is that? Who are these head sheds that made these decisions? I wonder if anything's, probably nothing's happened to them. They've probably been given promotions.
See, because right from the top to the bottom, there was mistakes made. And the other bad thing as well, there was medals being handed out. Now, I've got this theory on medals, they shine bright in sunlight, but they cast really long shadows. And it just complicates things. And there was a few people, officers weren't getting them, some were getting them. So they just wanted this shit show to go away. And it didn't do, I know some of the guys in the regiment suffered, some of the guys in the patrol suffered mentally through that because there wasn't like a clearing of voicing or even as petty as blaming somebody. And then it clears the air and you can get on because you've had your say.
It's essentially the two reasons. That one, like you said, absolutely. The mental aspect of it. I had a conversation recently, I can't remember which podcast it was or something. Who the fuck was that? I can't remember what it was, but they were talking about that. You come in off an operation, off a mission, and the benefits to that after action review, debrief. One, yes, you learn your lessons. You have a go at your muckature, you fucked up. You clear that air. You learn how you fucked up, how to improve on it, and you move forward. And the other aspect is, okay, that is drawing a line under that one, and let's move on.
Yeah.
I love what Hugh has just mentioned there, and reiterating what Chris was trying to talk about. Go away. Here I was thinking that they must have had a lot of lessons learnt from that, and sharing that. I think he mentioned the term cross briefing, which was giving the information to the other squadrons, saying, hey, this is what happened, this is what we did, or this is what I did in Chris Ryan's case, I'm imagining. And then being restricted to and limited to only speaking for 5 minutes or less than 5 minutes about his evasion, his escape and evasion, or his, breaking contact, I guess, being separated and then evading enemy capture, and basically walking out of country to get to a safe place. I hope it talks about that in here, but why you would limit somebody in terms of the information that they had and questions that the other operators would likely have and want to ask of him just doesn't make sense, apart from what he's mentioned there, mistakes made from the top levels all the way down, and then people wanting to cover their backsides. Man, just that ownership and accountability is a hard thing. It's easier said than done. It's easy to say until people are confronted with the mistakes that they've made and then needing to front up and go, yeah, that was actually me. I stuffed up giving the wrong frequencies for the communication for this patrol. I stuffed up in not communicating that the lost comms procedure that we were not going to have a helicopter go in because we've changed it. I stuffed that up. Have your vent, point your fingers, have a spray if you need to at the individual or individuals at the head shed, whatever. And then, be sincere and genuine about, I effed up all of that stuff, whoever it is. Take ownership of it and go, man, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to learn from this to not let this happen again. That's easier said than done too. So crazy, man. I didn't know that there was no debrief and that these sorts of things. This sounds like there's so much more. There could be a podcast just done on Bravo 20, just on the Bravo 20 patrol itself. Man, it'd be interesting to see and have the 5 guys that are still, if they're still alive, if all 5 are still alive from that 8-man patrol, sitting together, talking through their take, their perspective of what happened, including those that got captured, Chris Ryan that got away. That would be an interesting show to watch and listen to hear all the feedback. Anyway, carried on long enough. It's over 30 minutes now. I'm going to wrap this one up here. I'll come back to it and chip away at it like I do with the other podcasts, but appreciate you and your time if you made it this far. Keen to hear your thoughts and comments about what we've heard so far early into it. So, yeah. And as always, that being said, the message is the same. Regardless of any challenges, difficulties, trials that you may be going through, just encourage you to keep turning up, keep staying in the fight, put one foot in front of the other, take one day at a time. I trust that things can do and will get better if we want them to. The sun will shine again. There are better days ahead, and those better days are always closer than you and I think. So just stick at it. As always, go always a little further. Remember, who dares wins and who cares wins. And until the next video, there's a big mana wave coming from me to you, filled with my aroha, respect, appreciation, and gratitude for you all.